When I completed my PhD, many of you asked me how I was able to cope with my children and studying as well, especially for those of you that knew me when I came to Canada alone with my toddler in 2017, and I was doing a master's degree and here living alone with my son. So many of you have had questions to ask, how did you cope and what did you do? So today I am going to explain briefly how I coped and what I did so that you can learn and you can see if these situations that I'm going to describe here applies to you, and you can see how you can apply them to your life based on your unique situations. So the first thing that I would say, I was very disciplined, especially with my time. Like, I planned everything and I budgeted a time for everything and I planned everything and I stuck to that time. So for example, my wake up time was 5 o'clock because I had to feed Somto, bathe him, bathe myself, prepare Somto and be at the bus stop by 7:05 to take the bus that would take me to the daycare, and I'll just be arriving there just before 8 o'clock-ish. That was the first thing that I did. I had to make sure that I stuck to that time every day. There was no sleeping extra. There was no doing something else. I didn't have the room for that. So I was really disciplined and I kept to the time and to the plan. And once I put Somto, when Somto is at daycare, I either had to go to classes or I had to go and study. I was very conscious of my time, that I did what I said I was going to do at a particular time. For example, after I dropped Somto at his daycare just around 8 o'clock-ish and I get to my office or back home or to school by 9 o'clock, if I say that I am going to study for the next 2 hours, I would use the next 2 hours studying. When I was in secondary school, my biology teacher taught us something. She was like, a time lost can never be regained. So if I spend that time scrolling mindlessly on Instagram, then that is a time lost. I would never get that time again. And I was so pressed for time because I did not have any help, right? I was everything to my child at that time. So there was no, when I get home, somebody help me bathe something while I do something. No, I did not have that luxury. So I had to do everything by myself. So it meant that I had to keep to the timing all the time. So another thing that I did was that I asked for help. I know that when you come to a new country, you really don't know a lot of people that you can ask for help. But sometimes even your classmates, they are able to help. There were days where maybe the daycare was closed or something. I had to come with Somto. Sometimes I'll take him to my office and my classmates in my office would help me to watch him while he's sitting in my office, and then I go to the lab to get stuff done. And I also had this friend, she was my first friend in Canada. She's from Jamaica. There were days where I had experiments running and I had to go to the lab on like a Saturday, and she would help me to watch Somto, right? So what I did was that I would ask people for help. What's the worst that will happen? They will say no, right? Yeah, if they say no, that's fine. So, but it's your children as well. So you also need to only entrust your children to people that you trust. So you have to be careful who you are asking to help you to watch your children. And when people offered me help, I always took it, right? If they offer me, I'll take it. I did not act like, I don't need it, or be acting like superwoman. So I asked for help and I received help when people offered me the help. Then I maximize the time when Somto is in daycare. When Somto is in daycare, that is the most quiet time that I have. So I make sure that I schedule tasks that don't need distraction to the time that Somto is in daycare. For example, I cannot go home and be cooking when Somto is in his daycare. It's a waste of the time. This is time that I have to be able to focus. I can cook when Somto is with me at home. But tasks that require some quietness and requires focus, I would always do those tasks, schedule those tasks to do them when Somto is in daycare, and do other tasks that I can combine with the noise or with distractions when Somto is here. It's important that you prioritize these things. Like, it may seem like, that is not really necessary, but this is very important because it helps you to get things done when you need to focus. Then when I could afford it and I bought a car, it actually freed up time, because I noticed that going to drop Somto in his daycare and going back to either home or going to school, it used to take me 90 minutes for that trip. So imagine going to drop him 90 minutes, going to pick him up 90 minutes. So that took me 3 hours. But actually, Somto's daycare was 7 minutes drive from my house. But because the bus, we go all around the city to drop people, when I take the bus, it was 45 minutes each way. So once I was able to afford to buy a car, it freed up some time for me. So it freed up like 2 hours and 30 minutes for me. And this was some time that I was able to use to do some other valuable things. So in your case, maybe you don't have a car, you cannot afford a car right now, but do you have friends that you can call on to just help you to do the drive to drop off your kids? I know some people in the US, for example, they have that kind of community where they call their friends help them with the drive, right? So even if you don't have a car, do you have friends who can help you to do that? And if you are a good person, you will find people that will help you and support you on your journey, as long as you two is give and receive, right? As long as you are willing to give that kind of support when people need them, you would also find people. This is the big one that I did, because I know some of you are asking this because you have to work to make money so that you can support the family or support your child. How do you manage that with school, working, plus taking care of the child, especially because your child needs childcare? So how do you manage that? For me, I also found that very challenging, and that was why I focused on applying for scholarship, because I noticed that when I go to work, then the money that I was making from work was just paying for the childcare cost. So ultimately, at the end of the day, it really did not make any sense, because all the money I've made, and my job at that time was not giving me a lot of hours. So if I work for 3 to 5 hours and I pay the daycare, if I work 3 hours, I'll make $36 and I pay daycare $35. So I've left $1. So it just means that I went to work that day for the daycare. Then if I work for 5 hours, I will have like $20 in my pocket. So it didn't make any sense to me anymore. Like, I was just going to work for the daycare provider. So at some point, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to keep this child at home and only put him in daycare when I have to go to school. So when I have classes. Then what did I do? I started to apply for scholarships. I found that it took me less time to apply for scholarships, no matter how little the amount, like the value of the scholarship was, than for me to go and be working in one place and be paying childcare in another place, right? So what I did is that I applied for every form of scholarship that I found on the internet. Because at first, especially when I was an international student, my funding that I got only covered my tuition. There was no money for living expense. So this is why I was kind of struggling, right? And trying to work, trying to make ends meet. But once I was able to apply for other scholarships, so I applied for other external scholarships to add on top of the one that I already got, my research funding. So it now made sense. So even if it's $500, $200, whatever it was, I was applying, and before you knew it, 500 became 1,000, became 5,000. Then I was now getting a lot of scholarship. And now got to a point where the money that I got from my scholarship covered both my tuition and my living expense, and I didn't have to work again, right? So it just saved me from that stress. And that thing that I did, I would like us to take note of this, is that even paying for childcare, I got support from the university. At that time, when I was an international student, the University of Waterloo gave something called childcare bursary. So the childcare bursary they gave me was able to cover the cost of childcare, but I also had to manage it, because then they were giving, I think it was like $2,000 per term, and the term is 4 months. So it doesn't cover the entire cost of the childcare. So I need to make sure that I manage the money and allocate it in such a way that I would not spend more than $2,000 per term for childcare. And that was very helpful. So this is another thing I'll tell you. If you are still in the process of your application, make sure you're applying to countries that have childcare bursary for international students. I know that in some states in the US, they do that. In Ontario, in Canada, as an example, the government gives 100% bursary to international students, especially those that have really low income, which most international students have. Or some schools will give bursary, like University of Waterloo gave me bursary. So this is another thing that you can do. Make sure that during your application process, if you have children, you are looking to apply to countries and states that have the bursary, or schools that will give you this support, this financial support, so that you're not burdened with the cost of childcare. It really goes a long way when you have that cost of childcare covered for you. It allows you to be able to focus on other things. So in a nutshell, this is everything that I did, and this is what I looked out for, and it worked for me. So I've shared it. You can see if any of these strategies I've shared here would work for you, and see how you can apply to your life, because I know that everybody has unique situations and our lives are different, but just see how you can apply it to your life, okay? And if you have any questions, you can always feel free to send me a message. I'll put how you can contact me in the caption. Feel free to send me a message. And if you want to learn more about scholarships, to see how you can secure these scholarships, or to see how you can stack your scholarship, by that I mean getting additional scholarship on top of the current one, then also feel free to send me a message and we can have that conversation, because that's what I do. That's my bread and butter. I teach people how to secure scholarships so that they can fund their lives abroad. Okay, thank you for joining us today and for watching it to the end. If you made it this far, and until next time, take care. Bye.